Hi, I'm Moselle Martin, and I am here with Dawn, and we are The Right Story. So, we are excited to be here because we're going to be talking about who?
Kody Brown from the Sister Wives.
And I have never seen that show, so it'll be interesting to hear everybody's, opinion after we're done. So, like, are you a fan?
So I accidentally watched it. I don't know, I just needed something to watch and I turned it on and then I was watching a different show and then after that show ended, it went right into this show because I was done with that season and it just played on to the next one that was in the list, I guess.
Yeah.
And at first I thought, I don't know if I want to watch this, but I hung in there. And then before you knew it, I watched it 17 seasons and I watched every
Oh,
episode.
geez, that's a long one.
Yeah, is a really long one.
So, you've seen every episode of every season?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so this wasn't recent that you accidentally stumbled upon it then.
Yeah, actually it was. It was just a kind of a binge watching whenever
Binge.
like in the evenings when I sit down and I'm done for the day. This is what I was doing. And the reason why is because I found it fascinating because I was raised mainstream Mormon and this story kind of has to goes along with that religion to some extent, and then it transitions from mainstream into the fundamentalist type belief system where polygamy is practiced. So at first I thought, I don't need to know anything about that, but it started. The characters are real. You're watching their life unfold, and it just became interesting. And then the more you get to know them as individuals, and then watching the dynamics of their personalities and the struggles that they have to go through, it was kind of an interesting way of putting it all out there because we've never seen that side of polygamy before, where we normally think it's oppressive and you don't have choices and you can't stay, you're locked in, and there's a lot of coercion. So this was a totally different perspective. So that's, I think, why I ended up continuing to watch it. So it was interesting. But
Yeah.
I have some of my own little analysis that comes from the religion aspect of it, what I believed or what I no longer believe, or what I see as far as the patriarchy that's still there, and that kind of stuff. And then the behavioral patterns that we like to delve into. And that's kind of what we're bringing into the right story, is the behavioral pattern, but then also some consequences that happen in lieu of them putting all of their lives out there on the main TV. It's national TV. So
Right.
yeah,
And I mean, polygamy is controversial, so I'm sure they've had some of their own haters as well.
absolutely. Yep. And we're not here to debate whether or not polygamy should or shouldn't be legal, whether or not he should or should not have done it. That's besides the point. We're just here to discuss some of the behaviors and some of the fallout, some of the wins, maybe things that did work well and some things that didn't work so well.
Well, I'm excited to hear your take because since you know so much about it, before the handwriting, and then I'm really interested in hearing the thoughts of yourself and then any of the viewers who watched this series or know
Yeah.
about them after the handwriting. So
Yeah.
I'm excited about this, and this should be interesting.
Yeah. So I have my own personal reason for diving into this because, like I said, I was raised mainstream Mormon and I'm no longer Mormon. I'm an ex-Mormon, hashtag Exmo. And I think of the patriarchy still. When I watched this series, I could still see the similarities. And because Kody was actually raised mainstream Mormon and went on a mission in the state of Texas, so he was brought up in the same type of religion I was, but his parents converted into fundamentalists and into a polygamous marriage before he got home from his mission. So when he came home, his family dynamic kind of changed, and it gets weird from there. So
So how old was he when that happened then?
So you usually go on your missions when you're 18, 19 years old. So probably 20, 21 when he came home.
Okay.
Around in there.
So that had to
Yeah.
be a little bit of a
Yeah.
jump.
Yeah. So we're really going to be diving into the personality of Kody Brown and then that patriarch part of the Sister Wives family. And then, like you said, we'll analyze his handwriting, but I'm also going to talk about the human behaviors of it. And I have a little checklist that I've used for, and it's actually Joe Navarro's checklist, and it's how to detect if someone is emotionally stable or if they're a narcissist, or if they, it goes on into being a psychopath. So there's a couple of things, that we can look at as far as the dangerous personalities types of thing is where I'm going with this. So
I think that now that you said that, because for those watching who don't know, you and I don't compare notes ahead of the show. So so we hear each other's insight the first time when everybody else hears it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give any spoiler alerts, but a couple of things that you just said within the last couple minutes makes this even more exciting for me.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So the difficult or the dangerous personality checklist that I'm referring to, whether if someone is a narcissist or if they're emotionally unstable, they're paranoid, or they're, I'll say, predator. So instead of psychopath, we'll just use predator instead, because it kind of pulls out different, they can go a couple different ways. So I'm going to save the checklist though for last. So first we'll talk about, oops, I almost minimized the wrong window. I can't see you. So first we're going to just go ahead and dive into the Browns and determine what we think based off of the TV show. So he is a controversial figure, and the media has kind of, not exploited, but really expanded upon his lifestyle and living in polygamy. So yeah, he does have 4 wives and 18 children. And we're going to talk about what kind of lies beneath that public persona. So just keep in mind, I am not talking about Kody Brown, the person, because I've never met him. I'm only talking about the persona I've seen in the Sister Wives show. So how he was portrayed in that show. And sometimes that's real because it is one of the reality TV shows, but it also is Hollywoodized. So we don't know what actually is true. We don't know what was cut out or added in or, moved around, that kind of stuff. So we're only talking about Kody as far as the Sister Wives version of him. So we're going to explore that personality and those traits that contributed to his behavior towards his wives and children. And then we'll go into his handwriting and the dangerous personality traits afterwards. So, okay, you ready?
I am ready. I'm so excited.
All right. So, as you know, the Browns family is a polygamist family, but he started out with 3 wives. Well, he started out with 1 wife, actually. So he was married to Mary first, and they were married for several years before they took on another wife. So it wasn't like all at once. And eventually he married then Janelle after he married Mary, I think within a couple of years, and then Christine shortly after that. So the 3 wives and Kody lived together for, I think, 17 years before the 4th wife came into the picture. So 17 years is kind of hard to change, right? So it seemed like they had a cohesive way of doing things. They lived in a house that everybody was under the same roof. And the wives had their own section, their own quarters, their own house type area where they could spend, personal time. So they didn't all have to live under the same or in one big room or anything like that. You might think of a polygamous family. So they did have their separate areas with their biological children, but the kids could interact and be in contact every day. Kody was able to make contact with all the wives every day, and then he just rotated who he stayed with each night. So they had a system. Mm-hmm. Seemed to be working really well. And then they decided to bring in a 4th wife. And to me, that's when you kind of see things changing and spinning out of control. So like I said, remember that this is just talking about the behavior of the person, Kody, on TV, and the wives. I don't know who they are in real life, never met them in person, so we're not talking about them personally. But we do want to talk about examining the behavior that we can see over 17 seasons of the sister wives. So in the beginning, you feel you're drawn in and you can feel empathy and emotion, and you can tell that they have this connection and they try really hard to work together. They have their differences, but they worked well as far as trying to work through those differences. And then they stayed away from each other when they needed to. So we don't see a lot of the early days and some of those things. We hear about complications later in the season. So it looked like it was, I'm not going to say a perfect scenario, but it looked like they had a pretty good system down. But as we know, polygamy being illegal, and in the state of Utah, it is illegal. Even the state of Utah, it is illegal. And it even goes a little bit further in the state of Utah. So there, you can't even live in a spiritual marriage. So not you can be legally married to one person, and which he is. He's not state legally married to 4 people. He's only legally married to 1. And then he's in a spiritual marriage with 3 others. But that is illegal in the state of Utah. They took it a step further to try and prevent this from happening. So this started way back in 2010, and it just follows their lives and their children. So their children are younger in the show. And all of a sudden, there is a problem where they're being investigated, and he could be brought up on charges for living this spiritual marriage with 3 wives. So all of a sudden, they have legal matters and the threat of the father being arrested. So what happens when a polygamous family is discovered and put on trial and convicted? They put the father in prison and they separate the families and they move them. So the kids don't even get to interact anymore. So they were really concerned about that. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So they didn't want that to happen, because no matter what, they wanted to make sure that the kids were not taken away from each other, because the kids are super close. They're very close. They're with each other every day. So it's a big family, very close, tight knit, especially in the beginning, before the kids start growing up. You know, when kids grow up and they pull away and they do their things and they start moving out. So that it does come into that. So with all the unique personalities and everything, and then plus with this dark cloud of this investigation setting in, and then recently marrying Robin. So Robin comes into play right around that same time, and the wives are really having a hard time adjusting to a 4th wife. They approved it. They knew it was coming. She was selected, but when it actually happened, they didn't realize how they would have to give up extra time for that 4th wife. So now they're getting less of Kody's time. And so it did cause some hard feelings, and it did wear on their relationship. So it was difficult.
So are all these wives also Mormon?
Yep.
How does he find them?
Well, in Utah, they went to the same church. So their families are really close. And when you're in a situation like this, you live in a very tight-knit area. So for example, let's go here real quick. So Kody's father and mother converted into polygamy, and his second wife, before Kody even converted himself, is Janelle's mother, Kody's second wife, but not at the time. So this is how close, tightly, this is a tight-knit community. And yeah, his future mother-in-law was his second mom. So it's kind of really confusing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say Janelle, but when you explain it that way, then I'm like, okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, Mary, Janelle, Christine, and Robin in that order of marriage. So as they had this investigation is coming down on them, they decide that they have to leave. They need to just get out of Utah and move, but where to? So Las Vegas is an area that it's not illegal to be in a polygamous spiritual marriage. So, and it's less frowned upon. There's less, the people don't really get involved with other things like that. So it was an area that they could go to and they could feel safe to practice their lifestyle. And that's what they wanted. They wanted the right to practice their lifestyle and their religion. And they were, they felt like, we're not hurting anybody. We're not making the government support these children. They're doing everything they can to support them. I mean, they raise a good argument there as far as that goes. So they moved to Vegas, but the kids hated it. They did not want to leave. It was very traumatic and very emotional for them to go there. And on top of that, they were no longer living under the same roof. They lived in 4 different houses. And I think at this point, it starts breaking up that connection that they all had with the kids having that closeness. And instead of everybody being under one roof, being at a large roof, now they're individualized. Now they have this individuality element that's all of a sudden present. And while the kids are missing it, the wives are kind of appreciating it. So I think, it kind of goes with that territory where she now has her own home and, it changes things. So
right.
They struggled for quite a while until they could build 4 houses in a cul-de-sac. So they had 4 houses right next to each other in this cul-de-sac where they finally were able to move everybody into, but everybody still had their own home. But the kids could come outside and play with each other. They could run over to each other's house. And then Kody didn't have to drive over to another wife's house to find his shoes or his duffel bag or whatever he needed each day. So it was a little bit easier on him to just run across the street. So they finally got into these huge, massive homes. And they had them built too. So they're brand new in a brand new development.
So they just all this, where did they get all this money?
Well, they lost their jobs from Utah. So when they found out that they were part of a polygamous family, now that they're airing, this is how they got discovered, is because they started this TV show. So that's how Utah started catching on to, okay, wait a minute, what's going on with this family? And then people that they were working for were like, we don't really want to promote that. So they let people go. So now they're no longer working. So they had to come up with other alternatives, becoming entrepreneurs and building their own marketing business and stuff like that. So it took them a while. They started becoming real estate agents, selling houses. So it did take a while to do that, but they were able to eventually get the funding to have these houses built.
Okay.
So huge. It was a huge thing on the show itself to go through all that.
I'm sure that the reality show pays them something, right? I mean, don't they make something?
I think it does pay them something, but not enough to pay for the houses. So.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So they had some income coming in, but they had to open up businesses and, generate an income for, all 5 of them. So it was definitely a struggle. So now they have these houses, kids are back together, everybody's happy. They're now in high school. And then you have some of them graduating high school all of a sudden. And then Mary, who is the first wife, the only one legally married to Kody, at some point decided that in order for Kody to adopt Robin's 3 children, that she would divorce Kody as in a good favor, not out of any complication. But if she divorced Kody, it opened up the door for Robin to marry Kody so that they could adopt the kids. And then, because all the moms are moms to all the kids. It's, you have your biological mom, but then you still have your other 3 moms.
It's like the community raising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that she wanted to make sure that if something were to happen to Robin, that those kids were still part of their family. So, I mean, very good intentions. I mean, what a, can you imagine having to divorce your husband so that he could adopt someone else's kids? I mean,
nope.
That's a lot to swallow right there.
No, that's not me.
Yeah. So as it goes on, Mary now being, she's still spiritually married to Kody. It didn't change the relationship that much at that point. But what did change was when Mary and Kody had one child together. she was not able to have more children for some reason. So Mariah now graduates and she's leaving for college. So Mary becomes an empty nester.
Oh,
And
okay.
here's where it gets really weird is you have 18 kids, but you're an empty nester, but you're the only one in the whole entire family that feels that. So Kody, being Mariah's father, he's not an empty nester. He has 17 other kids.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Mary's in this great big huge house and her only child left for college. And now she's feeling a little isolated and out of sorts. Unfortunately, that leads people to find other methods of feeling connected. So she ended up connecting with people online, and people that were watching the show, they had an online presence, so it wasn't hard. But as you can imagine, as we're watching all of their lives unfolding in front of us as they're living it, then you have you bring in people that are nefarious and are not kind. And of course, they have, like you were saying earlier, they have their own, what do we call them, haters or whatever it is, people that agree or disagree. And like I said, we're not here to discuss whether you agree or disagree with polygamy. I'm getting to a reason why we want to talk about this type of thing. So what I started noticing was Kody's behavior now changing slightly towards, like for Mary, for example, where she was in pain. And I didn't see him having any empathy for the fact that she alone is an empty nester, even though there's tons of kids around, but they're just like not even validating that she has this pain. And they think, well, she's welcome anytime and she can come over anytime and she should be part of everything. And it's like, you can say that, but that doesn't make her feel welcome. So there's situations that have come up along the way too, where they've all been into counseling, trying to deal with the issues that they may have with one wife or another, and trying to solve and move past and heal from some of these things. But it doesn't really help when you feel like you're the odd man out now because you don't have kids, but all these other wives still have young kids.
Well, do you think jealousy played a role into it?
I think in a way, to some extent, yeah, probably, because she wanted to have more kids and she gave up a husband so that someone else's kids could be part of the family, and now she's feeling alone. And Mary's a very strong, opinionated person, and she's the kind of communicator that if we have something to air, or if I have something to say, I'm going to say it. I expect you to say it, but that's not necessarily how everybody else's personality was. So things didn't get discussed and communication kind of broke down, and it just leads to now what? So Mary starts talking to people online and she gets catfished. So for those of you that don't know what a catfish is, it's somebody that is befriending you on social media or online that uses a fake profile, phony picture, and pretends that there's someone that they're not, and lures you into some kind of relationship, be it financial or romance. Doesn't matter.
So you mean all those construction guys and the generals in the military that friend us on Facebook?
No, every single time it's a catfish.
Yeah, I'm like, no, dude, not happening.
Yep, doctors, EQ looking guys. Yeah, no, if they're wearing scrubs, I'm telling you, a 5-star general is not going to send you a friend request on Facebook. They're just not going to. So, yeah, always decline those. Don't accept them. If you can't tell who they are and that it's a real person, that they actually have posts and friends in common, and you can see things that on their posts that actually are relevant to a real human being, then it's a catfish, and just delete them. Don't accept them. But unfortunately, Mary did get involved with this catfish that turned, was supposed to be a man, ended up being a woman who was actually playing both roles and really, really scammed Mary into an emotional type relationship. So she didn't have a physical affair, but she was emotionally connected to this person. And at first it didn't do a lot of damage, but eventually somehow, and it didn't really show it in the series. I mean, it did a little bit, it hinted here and there, but eventually Kody started becoming bitter. Like, he started believing that she was going to leave him for this person, that she was in love with that person. There's all kinds of stuff, and what's true, what's not true, you'd really have to have been maybe involved with seeing what the posts were at the time. And I didn't go digging into a lot of that. So we're not going into that.
How did they find out it was a woman?
Well, because she started catching on, and she ended up in the car with this person, and she started figuring it out. So,
oh wow, okay.
But it put her in a dangerous situation, because this person they must have tapped her phone and had some kind of tracker on her car, because it was scary. It was scary. Wow. Like, why are you at this place? And she'd be like, are you around? Are you here? Or she'd be on her phone. Yeah, it can get really, really scary. And you feel like you're violated in so many ways. So now not only is she an empty nester feeling isolated, but now she's worried that she has put the entire family in jeopardy in an unsafe situation. So because everybody knows their situation, you're watching this TV series, it was easy for someone to come in and know that Mary's feeling isolated. So the way they played into her was they made her feel good. They made her feel like, you don't deserve to be treated like that from Kody. He's not treating you well. He doesn't deserve you. And it built her up and validated her as a person. So, and this is the part where catfishing is very dangerous, and it does do a lot of damage for people emotionally, psychologically, because you don't know, there's no way in the beginning that she would know that this person wasn't real. So when she wanted to meet him in person, she ended up meeting the woman version in person, but not the male version.
Jeez.
And this wasn't the only person that this person catfished either. She catfished others with the same type of thing, same story, same excuses for everything.
Now, can that person that did that to Mary, can she get in trouble?
If you can catch them scamming you. So if there's actually a crime committed, because you can pretend to be whoever you want online. Right. There's no law saying you can't create a fake profile.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Until
there's some way of governing that. And then you have the whole question on, do we want that to be governed? So it's a toss-up. Like I often say, in order for a 16-year-old to have a license to drive a car, a 3,000-pound vehicle, if they want to drive this vehicle, they have to go through driver's ed. They have to learn how to drive and handle the vehicle.
Yeah.
Not only that, they have to have the permit where they can actually practice driving with an adult in the car with them before they're set free to drive this vehicle, right? So once you do that, then you have to go take a test, and you have to prove that I know how to handle this vehicle. And we do that because vehicles are dangerous, right? It can hurt somebody if you don't know how to handle it. So my point to this is, we don't have any kind of requirements for someone to operate the internet, which can be far more deadly than the vehicle because of the damage that it does to people emotionally and that kind of stuff. So, and it's global. It's not just like in your neighborhood or driving around town. You're talking about this could be a global presence. So in this case, the emotional and psychological abuse that I feel Mary has experienced was chalked off to the fact that she should have known better. But when you're a victim, you don't always know better. When you're in it, you're not the one that can see it. Everybody else might be able to see it, but you may not see it. And you may feel that that's not true, even if someone is telling you, hey, this person's bad news. And this is the case for her own daughter, Mariah. So Mariah told her, Mom, that's a catfish. Don't, stay away from them. And she didn't. She continued the relationship, and it really damaged her relationship with Mariah because Mariah felt like she knew because she told her and that she should have stopped it.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen. So there's that as well. So I understand Mariah's point of view because I like to tell people and warn people, hey, don't do that. And it's really hard because when you can see something that someone else can't, you don't understand why they can't. Why are they staying there?
Right.
And that's the case in any kind of domestic abuse or violence situation. Not saying that catfish is violence, but it is abuse. It's emotional abuse, it's psychological abuse. So there's a lot of struggles with that. And Mary feeling so isolated, it probably felt really good to have someone on her side.
She was vulnerable, especially. Yeah.
Very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Not saying that she's right or wrong, and how far she went, I'm not sure. As far as I know, my impression is that it was an emotional connection, but no physical connection ever took place. But it started unwinding. And Kody, and this is where I want to get to Kody's personality and the behavior, is he started doing things like withholding love from Mary.
Oh my God. Like, okay.
So he punishes her, and I call it this is my words, nobody else's. I feel like he's punishing her for having an emotional connection with this catfish. And I'm thinking, but Kody, you ignored her. So I'm seeing two different sides. Again, it's easier when you're on the outside looking in, right?
Yeah.
So this whole painful experience turned into something even more so. So now Mary, I feel, is being retaliated against by her own husband, who is in a patriarchal setting. And I've heard him say things like, I'm in control of this family. I need to get control of my family back. This is things that he said online. And I'm like, oh my God, here we go.
I'm not laughing about that. That's funny, but I'm like, are you reading my analysis? Like,
nope, I'm not reading your analysis. So, so this whole thing starts spiraling out. So now Mary's set aside. This, like if you're familiar with religion or Mormons or understand that patriarchy in any way, you'll understand that whole set aside piece where you're effectively still married. It's spiritually married, but you're no longer having marital relations. And he absolutely refused her, said, I'm just not there, Mary. And I could understand, look, I'm not saying that he doesn't just, he's not right to be hurt. I'm just saying that his retaliation does further damage. And withholding love is one of the worst forms of punishment, right? That's really hard for someone to understand and still be considered your wife and still be considered part of the family. So it's had to be really difficult. Even though she apologized for her transgression, she came out on public TV and said, this is what happened to, we don't know what Hollywood cut out or didn't cut out or what, the real story. We only know what we've seen, right? Like I said, we're only analyzing the characters, not the people.
Right.
So this to me is like, Kody's behavior is the exact opposite of the proclamation of a plural marriage, right? If you're the proclamation of the family and in a plural polygamy type of thing, that includes your spiritual wives. So this structure and hierarchy is very patriarchal, very extremely patriarchal. So his decision to set aside the marriage actually had a massive influence in not only their marriage, but in the other marriages as well. And I don't know if he's seen that or if he was feeling that or if they were feeling that, but it absolutely did. So now Mariah's moved on. Other kids are starting to grow up and graduate, and they're looking at moving again because if you recall, there was that Vegas shooting from the hotel where 50 people were killed. Okay, so that happened, and they didn't live near the Vegas Strip. They could see it from their top store window, but they weren't like downtown Vegas. They lived out in the rural section, in the suburbs. So at this point, he's a little worried about living in an area and scared, and now all of a sudden he wants out of Vegas. And I'm like, you just built these houses. These houses should be like forever homes. There's no way you're moving from Vegas. Like, what the hell are you thinking?
Well, how long were they there?
I think it was about 6 years.
Okay.
Approximately.
Yeah.
So they were there long enough to kind of put that family dynamic back together, except for Mary kind of being on the odd man out there. So, you know, their relationships are starting to deteriorate, and you can see Kody starting to express a lot more emotion when things go wrong, and a lot of pressure maybe on him with paying for all these colleges and paying for all these weddings because the girls are getting married. You have to pay for those weddings. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, but you chose this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You chose this. You knew that you were having kids, and at some point, these kids were going to be old enough to move on. And,
Right.
you know, so I see him just spiraling out of control a little bit, emotionally lashing out and starting to get snarky with his wives, and the lack of communication, and him just saying, this is the way it's going to be because I'm the man of the family. And, you know, just like, I don't know, blah. Stuff that makes you want to puke. I mean, these dynamics are just, you know, it's unique, right? For polygamous family, this structure, and it does have different types of challenges than it would a monogamous type of relationship. Where in a monogamous relationship, you don't have to support 3 or 4 other relationships while you're trying to. So he's juggling a lot. I get that. But again, you chose this life. You knew that it was going to be work. And I think it's taken a toll. So this is where, if you do believe that polygamy is good, it's a lifestyle and everybody should be able to live it, then how do they deal with this part of that relationship when children are growing up, moving out, going to college, getting married? You know, Mariah came out as being gay, and that's, although it was received fairly well, because, you know, one thing about this family is they didn't want to be judged. So they were very open and really supportive of her when she came out. And it startled Mary just a little bit. And I thought, oh, that's going to hurt later, because I don't think she was expecting it. Yeah. I don't think she's opposed to it, but I think it really was like, where did that come from? Mm. And she didn't expect it, because Mariah throughout every season was saying, I'm going to be a plural wife. I'm going to be a plural wife. I'm going to be a plural wife. So when she comes out and says, I'm gay, it's like, whoa, wait, you? So I can see why Mary was shocked.
Yeah.
So, again, so, you know, you're talking about kids are changing. They're not, you know, as the kids get older, then you do less, but then you still have moms that have the smaller kids. So Mary doesn't have any kids at home. So she's still feeling a little odd on the outs with that, and everything's starting to unravel for Kody, and it's starting to get difficult. They have projects that they work on. They were doing a boat. They had to build some boats out of cardboard for some kind of event. And Kody had some words that were like, wow, that was so inappropriate. And Robin, the 4th wife, often backed him down and said, Kody, knock it off. That's just not right. So she would actually defend the wives too. So, I mean, they have their ups and downs, but they also knew that they had each other's backs in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. So now Kody wants to move to Flagstaff.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, I can't believe. And the wives are like, oh, no, nope, not doing it. And he's like, well, here's the thing. So he puts this white piece of poster type board up, draws a line. It's like, why we should, why we shouldn't. And he wants to have this powwow and say, give me a good enough reason why we shouldn't, more or less. And he's going to figure out a way to change their minds one way or the other, because in his mind, they're moving to Flagstaff no matter what. So what happens when they move to Flagstaff? They own 4 houses in Vegas, but because of the shooting, it's really hard to sell those houses. Right?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So they move to Vegas, put the houses up for sale, and are renting. Why?
So they put the houses in Vegas up for sale and moved to Flagstaff?
Yep. And rent.
They're renting.
So they have a mortgage in Vegas and now renting. Now, Christine actually bought. She bought a house. She was like, nope, I'm buying. So she didn't have to worry about the rent payment. So she owns 2 houses now.
So
But the houses didn't sell right away.
All in different houses?
All in different houses miles away.
Oh.
Janelle was 15 miles away at one point. And then Robin was refusing to buy when Kody started saying, look, we've been here long enough. We need to buy. We need to buy. We need to buy. And she's like, I am not buying. I'm not using the money from the sale of my house to buy a house. We're supposed to build a new house on the property that we bought, because they all pitched in and they bought a piece of property that they wanted to develop into another like cul-de-sac.
Oh, okay.
But when you move to Flagstaff and you buy property, it takes about a year before you can ever start building. Then you have to have power brought in and sewer and all that stuff. So I don't know what he was thinking. So he convinces them all to move again to Flagstaff while they already own homes. So why not buy the land and then work on getting that stuff done while you live in your house?
Yeah.
I'm like, this guy's giving me heartburn. So, they get to Flagstaff and then it's just now spiraling.
So how long have they been in Flagstaff now?
So they moved there, I think in 2018 or 2019, somewhere in there. And then 2020 hit. And Kody was a wreck. Like, he would not visit anybody. He was the only person. Okay, here's that patriarchy again. He was the only person allowed to travel from home to home unless everybody committed to not going anywhere. So he wanted everybody on lockdown. You're talking about 21 people locked down, even more than that, plus him. But he would not, like, for example, Janelle had 2 sons and they kept working. And he's like, well, they need to stop working and then stay home. But they needed the money.
Right.
So he was angry at his 2 sons for not stopping, to quit work and just stay home so he could come and visit them. He was irritated about that. And then Janelle was like, I'm not going to make them stay home. I mean, you're talking about you're only here once every 4 days and you're going to expect them to not work. So nothing was making sense with Kody. I mean, his demands were getting obnoxious at this point, and his arrogance and and then again, this is the character I'm seeing on TV. I just felt like he was out of control. So Robin, being the 4th wife, what happens to the youngest child when you have 4 kids? The youngest child, they're usually the ones that see all the other things that the older ones are doing. So when it comes to them, they're like, well, I'm not gonna make that mistake, right? So I think that's where Robin. I think Robin's position was, I saw what happened to him and Mary, and I'm seeing what's happening to him and Janelle and him and Christine, and I'm not going to put myself in that line of fire. So Robin did everything Kody asked. And that put a wedge between the wives because they felt like Kody was favoring her because he was always at her house. He's like, well, I'm over there because she's the one that follows the rules. I'm like, what? Oh my gosh. So so now they're just falling apart. Christine says, I'm out. I'm done. She leaves. She's the first one to leave. And she moves back to Utah. And then eventually Janelle's out. And then Mary's like trying to figure out, how do I stay? They still want to build the property. So Janelle was the only one that actually lived on the property temporarily. She went and bought a 5th wheel and parked it on the property so that she could live there. She's like, if I want this to happen, that I need to start doing things to make it happen. But as far as I know, they couldn't even agree with who's going to live where the property lines were going to be. And so I don't know that property ever got developed. And so here you go. You have this patriarchy that's moving this family, making decisions for 4 different groups, wives and their children. The kids that don't want to leave their high school from Vegas, that's where all their friends are. They are growing up there, and now they have to go to Flagstaff and finish out their senior year. I mean, this was really hard for these kids. Mm-hmm. That was hard. So that's kind of a synopsis of the series. And, recently this year, Janelle left and Mary has announced that their marriage is over. So other than Robin, which I'm not sure, I think they're still together, he's lost 3 of his wives.
Holy
And
crap.
he's lost relationships with his children because they just were like, I'm done. It was just too much. He was trying to control too much of the family. So now that I've said that, I would just want to run through something really quick. I don't want to ask, there's like 120 questions on this thing, so I'm not going to ask all of them. But I was telling you a little bit earlier about the dangerous people. There's a checklist that Joe Navarro, if you've ever read his book called Dangerous People, you kind of understand where I'm coming from. But it's a good thing that I kind of gauge when I ask myself some of these questions. So I'm just going to run through some of the questions, and you can kind of answer yes or no if you think that it is possible that this trait affects Kody. So we're going to use the emotionally unstable, not the narcissist. And so the first question is, you're constantly on the defense around this person. So then the next question would be, they display intense anger and outbursts. They're disproportionate to the circumstances of the event. They're very sure of themselves, less confident or less sure of themselves. So if you're a child or a wife or an acquaintance of Kody, can you answer yes to that? Next one, relationships are a roller coaster of highs and lows. Definitely. A person is unable to appreciate the consequences of his statements or behavior and how it affects others. Definitely. Behaves in ways that at times are inappropriate or outrageous. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a generic kind of statement, but it still applies. Seems to fall apart under stress with some frequency. And towards the end, definitely, especially during COVID, he was falling apart everywhere. Seems to play the role of the victim or the princess with regularity, because this could be for men or women. You can ask this either way, using it, whatever gender you're applying it to. So he was often the one that says, why is everybody treating me this way? These are my children. Why are my children treating me this way? So that definitely applies. Hates being alone and constantly seeks companionship, which is true. I mean, he's used to having, all these other people around him. So it must feel weird when nobody's around him. Frequently displays or expresses feelings of panic, anxiety, irritability, sadness, or anger, which definitely towards the end, he was definitely expressing a lot more of that. Feeling expressed emptiness, gets bored. I don't think Kody was bored, so I probably wouldn't answer yes to that one. I think he's putting on his plate. Intense anger has been observed towards family members. I don't know that intense anger, so I wouldn't give him a tick for that one, just because he might be frustrated, but I don't think he was intensely angry. But then you keep going on some of these questions, like recurrent instances of fighting or arguing and confrontations, definitely and even with his kids as time went on. You can't seem to relax, chill out, or stand down. That's definitely. Let's see. When you're around him, you feel emotionally and even physically drained. I think every wife felt that. After spending a few hours with him, you feel as if your world has been turned upside down. You ask yourself, wait, what just happened? That definitely happened. And those who are closest routinely have to check to see, what is the current mood? What mood is he in? That was definitely one. Arguments are bitter and ugly, full of cursing. Yeah, and I think they're ugly because he withheld love. I mean, he punished people for their transgressions. Rather than make amends or bring closure, he likes to wallow and argue, prolonged acrimonious discourse. Attachments are often made too quickly and too intensely with someone new. That was with Robin. Likes to get tattoos. That's not Kody. Is known to seek or harbor grievances for very long periods of time. That's definitely Kody. Easily generates. So as I'm reading this, I'm like, Kody Brown. And actually, I have the audio of this book. And as he was saying it, I'm like, Kody Brown, Kody Brown, Kody Brown. I mean, I could go down here. So there's 50. I counted 50 out of 126, which here's the score. If you have 15 to 35 of these features, this person who will occasionally take an emotional toll on others may be difficult to live or work with. If the score is 36 to 65, this indicates that the individual has all the features of and behaves as an emotionally unstable personality. This person needs help and will cause turmoil in the life of anyone close to them or her. Now, this is Joe Navarro's words, not mine. That's his scoring system. So, emotionally stable, I think Kody is not. And then I actually did it for the narcissist as well. And he got a score of 69. So I could go on and on and on, but I kind of want to toss it over to you so we can get to the handwriting part of it, because I know you've been like, oh my gosh, I could hear.
Oh my gosh. I just can't wait to hear yours and the viewers' comments about, especially if they watch, this show, because I'm just dying to know. So as you're talking, I'm like, this is insane. Okay, so let me go ahead and get it up there.
So these are your handwriting analysis that you've already done and created videos for. And we haven't talked about Kody Brown at all.
Nope. And it was Dawn's idea to do him. So I was like, okay. And she sent me the handwriting.
Like, who?
Yeah. And she sent me the handwriting sample. So I'm like, okay, I already have it. Don't need to know anything else. And here we go. So, yeah.
And I know with her, she doesn't want to know the details anyway. So I never share.
Since vowels are communication letters, let's take a look at some of those. He has a narrow capital A and E, which shows he is inhibited and emotionally reserved because he is self-conscious, so he is unable to act in a truly relaxed and natural way. His capital I has 3 strokes and indicates he is business-minded, cultured, intelligent, and direct. It is also large, which shows he can be a megalomaniac. However, just the top horizontal bar, when compared to the bottom one, shows he is determined to take control of women because he does not hold women to the same standard as men. He has a big-time patriarchal view of relationships, and this is shown by the pressure of the top and the length of the top being more or longer than the bottom. His lowercase I has a lack of eye dots, which shows he lacks attention to detail and can be careless. The curved eye dot that is there shows he is observant. The narrow O relates to numbers and statistics, which shows that this is something he is drawn to. The wide capital O reveals that he can be a know-it-all or show-off, but more on that later. The U has an exit stroke that shows someone who is very stubborn. Since I've been getting a lot of emails asking if he's narcissistic, I thought it would be fun to let you guys decide. But before we can do that, we have to look at the personality traits of somebody who is narcissistic based on mental health guidelines. The first indicator of narcissism is someone who is self-centered with arrogant thinking. Now, part of this can include materialistic and extravagant traits because extravagant is wasteful spending of resources. It also involves an obscene display of influence, quality, or wealth. Again, a show-off. Well, I already mentioned his megalomania. His wide O verified his show-off status, and his wide capital H shows extravagance. So we can check that box off. The next trait of a narcissistic person is lack of empathy and consideration for others. Well, if he is withholding emotions, does not respect women as much as men, is a megalomaniac, and the rest that we will be revealing, then I believe it falls into this category. So, check. Another trait is need for attention and admiration. This type of individual has a deep need for attention and admiration from people around them. This is because they typically rely on those other people as a source of self-esteem and do not have a defined sense of self. And since I already mentioned he was inhibited and reserved, and self-conscious, we can check this box off as well. Another trait of narcissism is someone who is manipulative. As I will be showing you soon, we can check this box off as well. The next trait is selfishness, and as I will also be showing you later, we can check this box off as well. The next trait is patronizing. His capital F has the top horizontal bar going further to the right, and this is a perfect indicator of someone who is patronizing, as are the T bars I already mentioned. So, yep, we can check this one off too. The next trait of somebody with narcissism is demanding. I already mentioned that his capital I reflects that he demands to be in control of his situations and women. Plus, the disconnect from the T-bar and stem shows he is a go-getter, not always an achiever, but this is also a domineering stroke. So, check. Another trait is someone who acts cocky. And by that, I mean someone who is acting self-confident and smug, almost to a nauseating degree, as if he's better than everyone else. Now, this can come across as someone who bargains as a way to protect his pride. I believe we will have this established by the time we finish this video and by stacking the traits together. So I'm going to say check. Now, part of, at least in my opinion, is that being controlling can be a form of selfishness. I mean, those who manipulate others are also selfish. Manipulation is an attack on your mental and emotional well-being. If someone is manipulating you, they might try to control your behavior or emotions, or even the situation, by making you feel guilty, ashamed, or afraid to get what they want. So, here we go. Check. Now, let's look at controlling a bit more. I already mentioned that he basically demands to be in control of women based on his capital I. This is shown by how thick and clubbed it is. When normal people write, the exit stroke will taper off and the pressure gets a bit lighter. But in Kody's writing, it doesn't do that overall. In fact, much of it gets more pressurized than tapered. But other ways that he shows he likes to be in control are his letter T. But let's talk about the T overall. The long strokes, when it extends over some or all of the following letters in that same word, shows he is protective and also patronizing. The short T crossings shows he is an underachiever and lacks self-control. Now, the majority of the cross strokes show heavy pressure, which means he is firm, strong-willed, and quick to anger. When the T-bar is longer to the left of the stem, it shows he can be cautious but also procrastinate. When the T-bar is longer to the right of the stem, it shows he is easily irritated, impulsive, tactless, and yet can also become very enthusiastic. Another thing that's important to know about him is that love is not unconditional. So this means he plays favoritism and therefore is not fair to his loved ones. This means he can punish by being passive-aggressive and even emotionally distant, unavailable, or cold. In other words, he can withhold affection, and this is also a form of selfishness and control. The capital B is larger on the bottom oval, which shows he is credulous and has significant self-admiration. That feeds right back into the narcissism possibility. The narrow and pointedness of his capital M shows he is uncompromising and persistent, but also serious and impatient. But whenever the exit stroke of any letter really goes below the body of that letter, it shows he can be unkind, contradicting of others, has latent anxiety, and overall difficult character. And same thing with the X going down below the letter. He can be materialistic, aggressive, opinionated, vengeful, determined, resentful, jealous, and pessimistic. His narrow H shows that he is fearful and critical of others. So instead of seeking self-knowledge or introspection, he has issues trusting others, so he blames others for things, refuses to accept responsibility or accountability, and therefore projects onto others. The backward exit stroke of the W shows he is feeling guilty about something, but it is also an indicator of selfishness, inhibitions, anxiety, self-deception, and also of someone who is self-protective, suspicious, vindictive, and defensive. Together, this can easily lead him to become manipulative. Now, for those who are new to me, be sure to watch my stacking video on my channel to understand how this all compiles together to form the personality behind the pen. And as a reminder, handwriting experts know that when traits repeat themselves in various different strokes, as we've been seeing throughout this whole sample, we are validating the most prominent traits of the writer's character. Now, I already mentioned how Kody can become angry and irritated. So when we stack everything together, it shows that Kody can be illogical due to emotions and lacks accountability. In other words, he does not see the results of his actions. When we combine someone who is angry, easily irritated, and determined with someone who has a temper and lacks emotional IQ and self-control, we have someone who is capable of having temper tantrums or emotional outbursts. His lines of writing are interesting too, so let me pick two of them to show you. This one is convex. It goes up and then down. This means he can quit easily and quickly and is typically pessimistic. So even though he can get excited about new projects, he quickly loses interests. He also tries to run from problems instead of working through them, unless he has a strong support system to help him through it. He is unreliable, easily disappointed, and quickly bored. He can become optimistic, but it doesn't last long because discouragement and frustration sets in. Now this line is wavy. This shows he is an emotional roller coaster. He can be unpredictably moody, and his moods can change according to the time, place, and people he is with. If he watched this video right now of his handwriting, he would likely disagree with these results based, of course, on his mood at the time. He is clever and skilled, but anxiety holds him back. He lacks self-discipline, and this can affect his ability to make decisions. He is easily influenced due to his restless mind and can be unreliable and waste his energy or money on insignificant things. He gets easily bored, and I have to wonder, is that why he keeps adding wives? Now, as with everyone, we all have the goods, bads, and uglies in our handwriting, including you and me. I've already mentioned some good positive traits that he has throughout his writing, but let me give you a few more. He can be affectionate and generous, friendly, creative, sensual, gentle, and honest. He can also be charming and humorous, but keep in mind, many of these traits can be used in a not so good way as well. Now, as you know, I could go on, but I'll stop here. But first, type in the chat if you think that he qualifies as narcissistic.
Wow. Oh man, that was amazing.
That's why I was laughing earlier. I'm like, are you reading my report?
No, I'm just reading him and his behavior. So this is why we don't share, because when we come together like this, we're usually spot on.
Well, and it's funny because you had said something right before the video where you said, I don't think he's bored. And I kind of chuckled because I'm like, he's bored. But I think that what it is he gets stuck in a routine.
Yeah.
And he needs that challenge, a challenge. And
Yeah, and maybe I should have said he shouldn't be bored. He's got enough to keep him occupied and busy. But I think he is hasty when it comes to decision making. I think the parts that you pointed out just confirmed and validated what I shared earlier. So, and the patriarchy, unbelievable in his hand. Wow.
I was like, oh man, I can't wait to hear, to read some of the comments and see. And now what I've started doing now is after I analyze them and we do this, then I want to go and see them in action. Cause like another, like one of my subs said about 6 months ago, and similar to what I used to say a few years back was, it's like seeing the movie and reading the book, or watching the movie and being the script, and so I have to see it. So I don't know, but 17 seasons, that's a lot of episodes. I got to try to find one that's, going to show me a lot of Kodys.
Yeah, it's hard because, I wanted to kind of go back and do some like screenshots or clippings to add in. And I'm like, that's too much to do over 17 seasons. You have to really be good at, what season was that in? But, and for me, there's a lot of conversation about the religion side of things that were triggering for me. It was like, oh my gosh, that's so like, ugh.
Well, and I don't know anything about the Mormon religion either. So, I'll be curious to see what, like, the comments should be good, because I think we'll get comments that are maybe for and against polygamy, which that's not our goal here, like you said. But also, I think there'll be some of the comments from the Mormon side of things that will help me maybe understand,
well, and I think,
where you're coming from more.
Definitely, because, and being raised mainstream Mormon, I learned a lot about fundamentalists. So, for example, Mormons don't hold the trophy for polygamy. I didn't know that. There are so many there's biblical polygamists that live in our country. There's different types of polygamist groups that aren't Mormon. And I just never even thought of that.
I guess I've never even thought about it anyway.
Yeah, because whenever you hear the word Mormon, the first thing most people think of, polygamy. But you got to understand the factions, or, the spin-offs of whichever religion. So just to give everybody a little quick description there, Joseph Smith is the one that created the religion itself, right? But when he died, then there was a difference in who should take over from there. Brigham Young is the one that took over, but Joseph's family didn't necessarily agree that it should be passed off to someone outside of the family. So they stayed together for a while, but at some point they split off. And then it became the fundamentalists and the Kingstons. There's a couple of different groups in there that practiced polygamy because they felt that was the gospel, the doctrine. And they had to denounce polygamy in order for Utah to become a state. So if Utah belonged to Mexico at that point. So what happened, if you think about the pioneers moved from Elmira and Missouri, and then they came to Utah because it left the United States, and they felt they could practice their religion the way they saw fit in Mexico. Well, then when Utah became a state, now all of a sudden they're right back where they started, as breaking the law in the United States.
So that seems so weird to imagine, like the border, like there's so much stuff in the news about, the open border in Mexico, blah, blah, blah. It seems so weird. Like if I picture the map and I see like a border here, that would just be so weird.
Yeah. So they thought they left the United States, and then they ended up being right in the middle of it again. So yeah. So just watching some of this and then understanding the dynamics where Warren Jeffs is the prophet for the fundamentalists, the FLDS. He's in prison because he married a 14-year-old girl, and that's against the law, obviously. So when people think of Mormons, it's not just one church. There's different factions of the church. Warren Jeffs is the one that's oppressive and abusive and violates the freedom of women, their right to choose. They have no rights whatsoever. They can't even own property. It's really bad. And if you watch, there's a couple of shows out there too as well that you can watch that explains, escaping polygamy and that kind of stuff. And one of Warren Jeff's wives also came out and made a docuseries, and it's really good. It really kind of describes what she's gone through. And now these girls and these ladies, they're women now, have turned around and they're helping others to escape that oppressive state. But there's places in Utah that you don't want to even pull into because they don't like strangers coming into their town.
So are these all like little small towns in the middle of
Colorado City? Yeah, the southern states, the southern cities in the state itself. So if you think about, like, if you're driving through and you're on your way to New Mexico or Arizona or wherever you're going south of Utah, and you need to stop at a gas station, the fundamentalists own that gas station. If you want to stop, if there is a McDonald's or if there's some kind of grocery store, the fundamentalists own the entire city. So there's people watching. Yeah. And they follow, if you're in the wrong place and you don't fit in and they think you're there to try and help someone escape, they will run you out of town.
Jeez.
Yeah.
It sounds like
it's scary. Yeah, it's scary. It is really scary. So then you have other areas like Warren Jeffs. You would think that it's all in Utah, but there's places in Arizona. There's places in North Dakota. There's places in Texas. There's places all over the country that there are fundamentalist members. And if they're set aside in the fundamentalist religion, they're hidden in a compound. So they can't communicate with their children, their spouses. They're in this like condition where it's like more or less like they have to go and repent for their sins. If they disappoint Warren Jeffs and he wants them to go on their repentance, whatever, they're sent to a compound and locked in.
For how long?
Until he deems it necessary to release them.
Oh,
they have to. Yeah. I mean, yeah, if you have any kind of angst against him, you're going to be, and you can watch the shows where there's some of these girls that have been either killed or asked to, die by suicide, or we'll handle it for you. There's some really, really, really scary events that these shows will portray.
Wow. I mean, you just have no idea when you're not raised in that. I mean, I never had a reason to look it up. So
well, and I didn't either. Raised Mormon, they tell you just have faith. Don't rely on any facts. Don't go on the internet, look for anything. And I, now with the internet and the amount of information that's out there, that, even just looking at the mainstream Mormons, now they're not necessarily violent and they're not practicing polygamy, at least in public, or that I know of. I'm not going to say absolutely not, that, Kody's parents, they transferred into polygamy, so it's totally possible. And I know there's areas in Salt Lake City in the valley itself that people they're married. They just don't let anybody know they are. So the children are not allowed to call their father. They can only call him by his first name, or Mr. So-and-so or whatever, but they cannot say, hey, Dad, even though they know that he's their father. He cannot take care of them because for fear of being arrested. And that's a shame when the kids can't act like normal kids in a family, and supposedly their parents are married. So the patriarchy is the same, where the church, the men hold the authority for everything, and women have no rights to hold any kind of power unless it's granted by a member of the priesthood. It's very, very patriarchal. And it's insane. And I always used to wonder, how come I never get along with these people, and why am I always on the outside? And I was trying so hard to fit in. And now I realize I don't fit in because I don't fit in.
Yeah.
And that's not bad. So, yeah, it took me going back a second time to try and figure that out. But
so it would be interesting to have seen the wives' handwriting samples too, but I understand those would probably be hard to get. But Kody was interesting in and of itself. Yes, he sure was.
And like I said, he might be different in person. Hollywood can change a lot of things, but when you look at what the analysis I just gave compared to the handwriting you just gave,
yeah, I would say that he's pretty true to his persona. It looks like,
especially towards that end. So that piece that you actually reviewed there was when he was trying to convince them to move to Arizona, and the market is here. We need to sell now.
Oh, is that how you got it?
Yeah. Well, and that's the screenshot that I got.
Yeah.
So he wanted them to sell right then, but then that Vegas shooting happened and nobody was buying. So he's hasty on those decisions and just kind of like, we're just moving.
Yeah. That's where it came. I think that's where his wasting time and resources comes in, because he was totally wasting the resources he had in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And where I said he likes to escape problems and instead of working through them. So he was running, Yeah. And I want to pose to the viewers that if they have a certain episode where I can kind of see some of Kody's behaviors, definitely put it in the comment section so I can just find one.
Well, I'm always looking for research of some sort, and I like using docuseries and miniseries. Yeah. I don't think I could say I've ever used a reality TV show before, but I couldn't ask for a better example and insight into fundamentalists and polygamy.
Yeah, no, this was fun. This was an interesting one for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for suggesting it. All right, anything to add before we wrap this up?
Nope. Well, that is it for now.
All right.
That's a wrap.
Thank you. Exactly. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate our mods, our subs, and our members.
Absolutely.
Make sure you hit the bell and subscribe and share this video. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. See you next time.